This podcast episode is sponsored by Microbalance Health Products. For over 20 years, Microbalance has been formulating and offering non-toxic and environmental cleaning products, homeopathic formulas, and professional-grade supplements to help people recover their homes and their health from mold toxicity. Visit microbalancehealthproducts.com to learn more and shop.
Welcome to the Modern Day Naturopath podcast with Dr. Sue. Real talk for those craving deep healing whilst living in a modern-day society. You'll be equipped with knowledge to make profound mind-body shifts that utilize ancient wisdom and will facilitate your healing once and for all. Inspired by Dr. Sue's chronic illness journey and all the real and raw pearls she has learned along the way. Come as you are. It's never too late to start.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Sue. This is the Modern Day Naturopath podcast. I'm so happy to have Dr. Sparks back here with me. We are continuing our series from our Microbalance sponsorship of Microbalance products, as well as our experience as naturopathic doctors. And now that Dr. Sparks is a mold expert, she has all of these amazing tidbits to share with us. So Dr. Sparks, if you haven't heard about her yet, go back to our initial podcast. We have a foundational mold podcast. We had just recorded one on mold colonization that was published yesterday. And then we also have one coming out next week on mold detoxification and your drainage pathways and some of our favorite ways to start healing from mold. Dr. Sparks is a naturopathic doctor like myself. She is an acupuncturist. She also has a master's in Chinese medicine. She works at Naturally Sue Wellness. She's been seeing patients in our practice for 5 years, doing an amazing job helping our patients heal. You can follow her on Instagram. Press pause so that you can go follow her. It's Dr. Sparks ND. So Dr. Sparks ND. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming back here today so we can finish this mold conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I know. I'm so happy that we're doing this. I feel like every time we do a podcast together, I feel like it builds on another one, right? It just continues the conversation, and then we end up finding even more testimonials, stories, clinical pearls that we've learned along the way. So I'm really excited today to talk about burnout and mold. I have recently had more focus in social media, newsletters on burnout because this is a very, I would say, plaguing topic among Americans. They are always reporting to us that they're burnt out. They're having levels of burnout that it feels almost impossible to survive a day. So I've started to make more of my niche burnout and helping people recover from burnout. And so I actually did a podcast with Dr. Donnie Wilson on burnout. And you can resort back to that one as well for that podcast. But today we wanted to make sure we talk about how mold can affect burnout and how being burnt out can also make healing from mold really, really hard and difficult, but possible, right? So we have to just make sure that we give people tools. So before I get started sharing some basics about burnout, have you been seeing in your patients, whether it be your acupuncture patients or even some patients in the clinic, telling you that they're just, at a level of exhaustion that is maybe more than just fatigue?
Definitely. And like sleep doesn't make it any better. Like I feel like with fatigue, people, okay, well, I get a good weekend of rest or, a good little short vacation or something and they're going to feel better. I feel like with burnout, it just takes a little longer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's more of a profound exhaustion, and the exhaustion usually is coupled with that mental emotional picture, right? When you're just, maybe 18 or 19 and you're just tired because you went out in college or you went
Yeah.
out with your friends and you're like, oh, I just need to sleep it off and I'm fine,
Yeah.
right? Like that's tired. Or let's just say like, oh, I haven't been eating well lately. So I'm like nutrient deficient and I'm just going to eat a little better and now I feel good. This is marked by this really profound exhaustion that is not, like you said, better with rest. And it usually has a lot of other symptoms that come along with it physically. So, some things that I see and also are symptoms that we say are associated with burnout: headaches, muscle aches, neck pain, getting sick constantly. The patients who are like, "Oh, I'm sick again. Oh, I'm sick again." It's like, I just talked to you. You were sick, right? It's like ongoing sickness. They'll usually have GI symptoms, so a lot of nausea, indigestion, acid reflux. They'll have this usually issue with their cycle, in that it's either irregular, they'll have painful cycles. So it basically is a systemic effect on the body. And then you add into the mental emotional effects of feeling not inspired, unmotivated. They're usually feeling like apathetic, indifferent. And burnout was usually pegged as this corporate burnout. It was, "Oh, you're
Right.
not feeling like valued at work. You're feeling you're feeling undermined in your position. You're feeling like you're being taken for granted." So what ends up happening is now you're already not feeling valued, on top of now exhausted. And so it starts to go into this depression. Some people get really severely irritable, anxious, they retreat. I've talked to people who said, things that I used to enjoy, I don't even wanna do them anymore. It's very depressed oriented. I don't even wanna see friends. I don't even want to feel better almost. Like, they don't even wanna feel better to go outside because they kind of almost felt comfortable in that functional freeze state, right? I remember hearing Dr. Jess at the A4M conference, and she said, just that, like, at the end of the week, you're, like, laying down dazed and confused watching Netflix in that functional freeze where you're, like, don't even wanna go anywhere because you love being isolated. So, but now what's happening is it's going into other areas of people's lives. So, caregivers, it's going into trauma survivors. Think of the burnout to have dealt with suppressed trauma, or, whether you didn't remember it or you did remember it. And then,
Or I was gonna
right?
say years of hypervigilance from trauma, right? There's
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. So they're right. So it's like this either on, or this like chronic suppression of it. And so we see trauma survivors, we see chronic illness warriors, as I call them. Lyme disease, as we see tons of
And
Lyme
mold.
patients, and mold specifically. That's why we wanted to go into that today. But just going through your experience with mold, I mean, it could be traumatizing in and of itself to just find mold in your house, never mind how it's affecting your body and exacerbating your burnout. So there's not just entrepreneurial or corporate burnout anymore. It's now going to these other areas. And so, you know, we want to make sure that we share with people that everyone can come up with a different presentation in how they show their burnout. So you may see, Dr. Sparks, someone who's, tired and wired, where someone's like, "No, I don't even have any cortisol left to be wired," right? I'm just chronically exhausted. So can you tell us a little bit about how we check for check people's adrenals, and the role with your adrenal health and fatigue, and also seeing potentially if you've been running from a bear, right? Your cortisol has been high, and your neurotransmitters, right? Adrenaline and all these have been high for so long that eventually that we just get this kind of chronic depletion. And maybe just share about, these high cortisol in that acute phase versus that low cortisol, and kind of how it can show in different symptoms in
Yeah.
patients.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. I will say what I do talk about with patients is that, evolutionary wise, you think about it was only a couple hundred years ago that we became industrialized, right? So for thousands of years, our bodies were acting like animals act in the wild, and so we developed, cortisol is our, I call it the stress hormone that tells us there could be a bear in the neighborhood, but I don't see one. Right. And then you have adrenaline and noradrenaline, or epinephrine, norepinephrine, that are the ones that are like, I see it, I need to bolt. Right. And then cortisol's like, yeah, and then you both bolt. So the thing is, now that we're not only in an industrialized civilization, we're also in the technological age. So everything has sped up, and our bodies have not evolutionary wise changed, right? Like we haven't got new hormones. There's not, oh, where's the new hormone to deal with like subways? Where's that hormone? You know what I mean? So we're kind of dealing with these new things that are like constant. So I also talk about like, imagine a deer or an antelope or something, and he's just, in rest and digest, which is parasympathetic, eating his grass, doing his thing, and then he sees the predator, and then he's in fight or flight, and he's running for his life. Hopefully, it's gonna eat something behind him, right? And then he gets away, and once he's away and he's safe, he goes back into rest and digest and starts eating again. Well, we're constantly in a mode where we're saying like, I think it's going to eat me again. I think it's going to eat me again. And so the cortisol stays high to get you ready, because cortisol mobilizes sugar, stored sugar. And you need sugar to produce ATP, which is like our energy, cellular respiration, as you know. And so you need that. And so cortisol kind of stays at this high level because the tiger's going to get you at any moment, in the subway or, wherever you are. Could be your boss, could be a family member that drives you nuts, when you're caregiving, right? So, whatever it is, the baby crying. And so, it gets to the point where adrenal glands are like the size of your nail, right? They're very teeny. They're producing all this hormone. And, eventually it's kind of like the pancreas with insulin resistance, where it's like, I just can't anymore, right? And so then you start getting the lower amount of cortisol. And so when you have the high cortisol, that's when people can feel like wired but tired, we say, right? So it's like you're exhausted because you've been in this hypervigilant state all day, but you're still wired because you have high cortisol, right? So you can't get to bed. Then when they get really sluggish, and we call that adrenal insufficiency, then it starts getting lower and lower, and you just feel like you're dragging all day. I say it's kind of like, for me, I call it feeling like frosty. Like, you ever see those antihistamine commercials where the person, like, everything is dull in front of them, and then they take the antihistamine and everything is clear, It's like, I feel it's that dull feeling.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I remember in medical school, one of the girls you went to school with, she didn't do well on an exam, and she just had like no affect. And she's like, I don't have any cortisol to give an F about it. Like I can't even surmount a response. Like I should actually care about this. Like by year 3 or 4, you're like, I can't actually care if I wanted to, because you're literally exhausted. It's so funny because I did my Dutch test on myself about 4 times in the last few years. Do you believe the cortisol's still high? It's like, how is that? I was like, wow, adrenal.
Well, you're running a business.
I know, right now the adrenals would have been like, all right, you're done, lady. But I thought it would be literally done already with
but
high cortisol.
You're a naturopathic doctor who's doing as many good things for yourself as you can to keep yourself afloat, which, like, caution, note to self and note to the public, like, yeah, you can maintain for longer by doing these good things, but you still got to be careful, because it can still come crashing down at any moment if you're not being careful about it.
That's true. So I guess if you really think about it, what you just said, I am eating well, even though I'm like running a business to take care of patients. I'm still eating well. I'm still exercising. I'm still taking good supplements. So I guess the going into that cortisol, I guess, insufficiency is probably a little less, but it doesn't mean that I should still act like a maniac and run around like a basket case, right? Because eventually it's not going to be like that. But no, I wanted to mention that because that always made me laugh, because you'd assume that, oh, okay, after years of just chronic stress, but that's what also the beauty of taking care of yourself. And I wanted to mention too, they say that the millennials are the burnout generation. When I did research about this a while ago, because they say that they're we were around the age, I guess this is where social media started coming out and we had to be on, and then the student loan debt, and then the technology, and then the lack of jobs. So it's just, and also a lot of millennials are entrepreneurs. And so there's this constant, oh my God, when's the next dollar coming in? Oh my God, what is this marketing effort working? Is this, and it's just like this constant rat race to keep going. So I thought that was interesting. I'm not saying that other, generations can't have burnout, but it just goes to tell you when you put that much pressure on people that they're eventually going to say, I can't, this is too much. I'm going to crack.
Yeah, I mean, I think my lucky star is every day that I was not a teenager or a young 20s person or even young 30s with social media. Like, I got to have all my crazy life, whatever I did, and no one has it on video anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine being a teenager right now and making a bad decision because your brain isn't fully formed until you're 24, 26. You know what I mean?
Right?
So it's like, you know what I mean? Oh my gosh. So that stress alone, and then also the stress of comparison, right? I think it's so
Oh my
dangerous,
God. Right. And
and
those
I think
TikTok
social media is
videos,
that problem.
right? The TikTok videos, and then everyone's like every time I'm an Instagram girl, but I go on TikTok once in a while to see like certain things, and all you see is these like it's like very, very, very thin girls with like belly shirts on at like 13, 14 years old doing dances. And at 13 or 14 years old, I remember I was a size 16. Like I couldn't wear that. Like I was a very overweight child. Like I was thinking, imagining myself doing that at that age and how I would have felt. It was already enough for the bullying in school. Imagine then having that on top of it. So I can't even imagine the amount of trauma that you have to unpack as you get older, having all these comparisons with social media. So I guess that's why too they're saying now this what is Gen Z, that's even worse now, right? It's like everything social media. We didn't even have a cell. I mean, what do we have? Like a flip phone or something? We didn't have.
I had a payphone, so okay. Like when I was growing up, they invented calling cards. Woo! We didn't have to put the
I
coins
know.
in.
I know. Do you remember those Nextel phones?
The what?
You remember
Oh,
Next?
like there were walkie-talkies and yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I was in, my college dorm, and I had a triple in St. John's in Queens, and this girl was booping, like, that bleep, like, all
Beep,
night with
beep.
her boyfriend. I had, like, a nervous breakdown. I don't know what I think I blacked out. I took her phone. I don't even know where I put it because I couldn't take it anymore. Because that was the only way to communicate was with that stupid
Bleep, bleep.
walkie-talkie phone,
Bleep,
but that
bleep.
was
Bleep, bleep. Oh,
I
yeah.
literally still have nightmares of that. I literally still have nightmares of that. And you know what else I wanted to share with you guys? There's a burnout quiz that
Mm.
Dr. Donnie Wilson is a naturopathic doctor. I did my clinical hours with her in naturopathic medical school. So I shadowed her in Manhattan and in Long Island. And I admire her work. And one of her niches as well is stress management and burnout. And she has some books on this. And I interviewed Dr. Donnie on my podcast, and she basically came up from her experience with your 5 burnout types. So there's a quiz that you can go on her website. I thought that was super interesting just to tell you what type you are. But like Dr. Sparks was saying before, we can actually test your cortisol.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even
So
get into that.
yeah, so tell them a little bit. So I know you talked with the cortisol, but tell them a little bit how we actually test, and then how one person's burnout picture would be potentially treated completely different than someone else's, and that kind of unique. That's why it's like the bioindividuality naturopathic medicine thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing that we tell potential clients all the time is we treat the individual. We treat the person, right? So one of our favorite tests in general is the Dutch hormone test, the complete, and that does have an adrenal profile in it, and we love it because it's 24-hour urine panel. So it's not just giving you like that quick snapshot of like when your hormones are the best in the morning in your blood. It's giving you the entire picture. So that's nice, but it also gives you that diurnal rhythm. It shows us like, are you doing a circadian like full day of higher cortisol and then lower, at evening, or I just had someone nothing, like
Flatline.
zero, flatline. And then you can have the people who are like, oh, I've got a good thing in the beginning and then it just stays high and now I can't get to sleep at night. So all those people would be treated differently. We also, if you didn't want to do a full sex hormone panel, they also offer just the adrenal panel. And then you can also do saliva testing. We also do that, which is ×4 again. And then if you couldn't do that, you could always just do a blood cortisol for the morning and see, do you even have enough to wake up in the morning? So there's
Right.
some things that we can do. And that can kind of give us a picture, but it's really nice to see the 4 snapshots throughout the day,
Yeah.
you
The
know?
4 is so much more comprehensive because what if you wake up fine and then you dip super low 2 hours after? So you did this blood test for cortisol and it's normal, and then you're like, "Oh, my cortisol's fine," but it's, like, actually not, and then it plummets the rest of the day. So, that's really important too. If you can test, testing would actually give you a lot of data to know exactly what to do that your body is going to need. Some of us in the meantime will use adaptogens, right? Let's just say someone's like, "Hey, I can't do this test. I'm going to do an adaptogen formula." So me and Dr. Sparks we use all the time adaptogens, which just help your body adapt to stress. And so if cortisol's higher, it can help it go lower. And if it's lower, it can help it go higher. But what I've noticed, I don't know if you've seen this, that's not enough when someone has that flat line. Like I need to do like a licorice or I need to do like a glandular. But that's where I see a lot of problems too when you just kind of treat with glandulars. And what if your cortisol's high? And
Yeah,
you're
I
like,
don't love that.
"Oh,
Yeah, because I find people will come to us on like the combination adrenal supports from other practitioners, or I've seen someone say like I took this thing because it said adrenal support and it had a glandular in it, or a thyroid support and it had a glandular in it, and then at the same time they were high, they were already high. And then they're like, my heart's racing, I have anxiety. I'm like, you could have thrown yourself into a thyroid storm or,
yeah."
or like hypercortisol issues or, but then at the same time, when it's really low, I've seen in some people that the adrenaline and the noradrenaline kind of start to take over the stress for them. And I always say like cortisol, you can get like a nice curve, but like adrenaline's like, here I am. Okay. Here I am. You know what I mean? So it's going to be like, oh, I feel really anxious. Okay. I'm feeling better. Oh, I'm really anxious. So like those kind of people, they could just have the flatline cortisol and then the adrenaline's like, I'll help you get up the stairs. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is, you know?
Right. Oh, that's a great explanation too, because people will say, well, why if my cortisol's so low, do I still have so much anxiety? And just like you just said, it's that
Adrenaline.
adrenaline. And do you notice sometimes, even with those low cortisol cases where I would give a licorice or a glandular at that point, I have to go super slow because sometimes even though they're so flatlined, I give them a little bit of that, and then they go into that anxiety too. So I usually have to go really slow. So point of the whole thing we're saying is it's good to know what your curve looks like so you know what to give yourself so you don't make yourself sicker.
Mm-hmm.
So you usually going to have a glandular in it. You'd want your cortisol to be lower than it would
Right.
be high.
Yeah. So you and I would never
Feel
just be like, here, just take this, like without like I'm just not doing.
absolutely.
And also, I mean, adaptogenic herbs are some of in Chinese medicine, they call it like the highest tier herb that you could give someone because it's working on mind, body, spirit.
Oh,
You
I
know?
didn't ever think of it like that. I always think of it just like, oh, mental, emotional, your kind of like well-being, but I never thought of it as mind, body, spirit. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, they're kind of like the kings and queens of the herbs family to Chinese medicine. They call them
Oh,
qi tonics in Chinese medicine.
wow. So an adaptogen in Chinese medicine is a chi tonic.
Yeah. Yeah, and well,
Oh, I love that.
that's actually a good point too. Panax ginseng, which is so common in a lot of the adrenal formulas, I've found my people that have that really low cortisol with the adrenaline that's doing this, they will, I found out the hard way, react to Panax and what you were saying. Like one girl
You're
ended up
talking.
with full on panic attack. So now I'm like, I don't give Panax unless I think that someone can handle it and they don't have anxiety. If they don't have anxiety, okay. If they have anxiety, do not take Panax ginseng.
Yeah, I'm so happy you told me your experience with that patient because I remember that happened to my patient and I asked you and I was like, I didn't even know this thyroid support had ginseng and she was having it was a thyroid support that had ginseng and of course because it was a thyroid support it had some adaptogens in it and she was having panic attacks in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
and
not like it may sound amazing, just it may not be amazing for you. We're not saying anything bad about it. It's just you may not be the candidate for it.
and that's why we practice individualized care.
Right. Absolutely. And can we talk a little bit about, before we get into, I want to talk about, recovery from burnout and obviously this kind of mold connection too, but what are some non-fancy, as we call them, foundational basics to start helping us recover from burnout? Like, give us some examples of what you would say to your patient if they come to you, they've whether they've been exposed to mold for a while, or they've already been burnt out for a while and then all of a sudden they got exposed. Where would you start? What are those foundational basics that you would tell them
Well, I
to do?
think, as vitalistic naturopathic doctors, where we always start is lifestyle and diet, right? So prioritizing nutrient dense foods and protein, right? So, guys, proteins are the building blocks of neurotransmitters, and good fats are the building blocks of hormones. So it's like you need them. And then all the vitamins and nutrients and minerals that come from vegetables, right? Like a lot of magnesium. We're always giving people magnesium. Well, if you ate a lot more vegetables, we wouldn't have to give you so much magnesium. Um, so there's
Right.
that. And then, we always talk about getting your body into that rhythm that we were talking about on the adrenal panel, which is go to bed the same time every night, try to wake up the same time every day. And yeah, okay, so you have to wake up at 6 every day for work, but then on weekends, you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna sleep into 8 or 10. I would say that that's okay for some people, but for the burnout people, what you really need to do is show your body that you're safe, right? So it's not in a hypervigilant state. So by having a routine, eating the same times during the day, the body going, oh, I'm going to be fed. I don't need to mobilize sugar with stress hormones and deplete myself even more, stuff like that. So eating at regular times and then sleeping at regular times is a great start. Getting sun in the morning, turning down TVs and blue lights at night, and even just like come 8 o'clock at night, like start just turning some lights off in the house. You don't need it to be so bright. Those are just some basic things. But the one thing I think you and I were talking about before is boundaries, right? So there is a doctor, I hope I'm saying his name right, is Gabor Mate. Do you know of him? He,
I've heard of her.
yeah, and so he wrote a book called When the Body Says No, and it's a
Oh,
great
yes,
book.
that book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And basically, he was seeing patients for a long time, and he just started realizing that mainly his women patients, they couldn't say no. They didn't have good boundaries. And when he started working with them to create better boundaries, they started healing from autoimmune disease, from cancers, like things like that. So it's basically saying, if you're not saying no, but you need to, the body will do it for you eventually, you know? So I think that's a good thing to really understand. And I mean, gosh, it's really easy coming out of my mouth, right? You could be a parent with 4 kids. Oh, she says set a boundary. You know what I mean? Like in that case, of course, kids are going to take up 24/7 of your time, but that's when talking to your husband or your partner is really important to say, okay, but I do need X amount of time to myself. And so I need you to up to bat from this time to this time. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
something where you're creating that. So a boundary, this is something that I was telling you I wanted to say, because people think that a boundary is like me telling you what to do. Like, you can't say mean things to me, right? That's my boundary. Okay, that's not a boundary. That's trying to control another person. The boundary is, I don't believe that I should accept hateful speech. And so if you say hateful things to me, I walk away, right?
Right.
How do I choose to respond to that? That's the boundary, right? So the boundary is, hey, you say it the first time, like that hateful speech bothered me and upset me and hurt my feelings. And I would appreciate if you want to continue having a friendship with me, not saying that, and then if they did it again, you're gone. You know what I mean?
Right. Instead of blaming them for keep doing it, but you keep sticking around.
Right. So that's the
But we all
difference.
do
That's
that
what a
so
real
much,
boundary
right?
is. Yeah. Yeah. It's
We gotta like
totally.
do ourselves. But it's practice. Like even I ask you, like, okay, I think I did that. You're like, well, no, you shouldn't have probably said, like, you had to do. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Like you're actually like You have to like it's an actual ongoing practice to be able to be like, "No, I'm not gonna accept this, and I have the ability to walk away." But that's so empowering,
But it doesn't
but we
feel
don't
that
take
way because
that
as
like
women,
at
we're
the moment.
raised as people pleasers, right?
Yep,
So just society wise, and I'm sure there are people pleasers that are as well, and
yep.
everyone in between. But it's just in this culture, we're definitely taught to be people pleasers, and to the detriment of our health. There's that doctor and other doctors doing research also. Oh gosh, what's her name? The one that talks about vulnerability. Is it Bree? I can't remember her name. I blanked. But, they're doing this research on people and boundaries and, emotional states and things like that, and showing that people who don't have good boundaries get chronically ill more often.
Thank you for sharing that. It's probably the most important thing we're gonna say on this podcast today
Right. Yeah. You remember what I
about that.
said to you yesterday? I said I wish I could create a shirt that said boundaries hard to make, harder to keep. You know?
Yes! Oh my god. I'm gonna
Should be our
as a Post-it
slogan.
note.
Yeah.
Really putting on a Post-it note. Oh my goodness. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about this product that they have from Microbalance because it does one of the things that we can do to start supporting our hormones and pituitary. So this is that Celtropin
Oh, yeah.
product. I love it because it's homeopathic. Struggling with low energy, poor sleep, or burnout from mold exposure? As a naturopathic doctor, I've seen firsthand how mold illness can drain your body's ability to heal. That's why I recommend Celltropin by Microbalance Health Products. It's designed to naturally support cellular repair, boost energy, and improve sleep, helping your body recover from stress and environmental toxins. If you're looking for a gentle, effective way to support healing, check out Celltropin at microbalancehealthproducts.com. Your body deserves the best support on its recovery journey. So, Dr. Sparks, where would you feel like this is a good place to put, like, or let me rephrase that. What part of maybe the patient's treatment would you say that this would kind of fit in? Like, you do all these foundations because we would, right? We want to do the foundations first. And then where do you think this would fit in, for example?
So I actually have a good number of patients, female patients, that when they have mold exposure, at least, their cycle stops or becomes really irregular. So I feel like that's a good indicator of where they are on their healing journey. But then there's also, so the pituitary, it's kind of the command center of the hormones back here. And then it's helping us with thyroid, sex hormones. It's helping us with adrenal hormones. What else? Vasopressin or ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So it's kind of keeping all of that, and it's like the conductor of the symphony, right? I always say the endocrine system is the symphony. So I think you're kind of working on that kind of a little bit later, right? Because we also want to see where the body is going to go on its own, just with, doing foundations, protection, breaking up biofilms, binding, killing, you know, how is it going to react? Is it going to just restore itself naturally, or do we need something like this to help kind of gear it back into, you know, the system it needs? The other thing that I remember reading about with this was that it helps with the cell danger response.
Yeah, we were researching this last night. I remember we talked about that.
And I think that's why I also think it would be really good to use towards the end of, that kind of that cycle that I'm talking about. Because what happens is, yeah, the body wants to heal on its own if you can give it what it needs and take away what it doesn't need. But if it has this cell danger response, it has a harder time kind of flipping back into that homeostatic
Right.
way. And so I think that that's a great thing to use for that.
Yeah, and that's so interesting too because our friend Veronica, she always talks about this cell danger response, and I know when I've shared with her, like when I've done a bioresonance scan with her in the past, she would say that every time I got a flu, my body literally goes into the same, like, that cell dangerous if I had Lyme, because I had Lyme for so long. So it's like almost like she would call it like cellular PTSD almost. So
Yeah.
I thought that was super interesting, right? Because it's like we got to kind of train your body out
Right.
of that kind of like cycle, like that pattern that has been like hardwired. And this product too says, um, temporarily supports pituitary and endocrine systems for hormonal balance, improved energy, endurance, circulation, and cellular function. And so it's completely homeopathic. And so, right, with homeopathy, what's our main things we always tell people with homeopathy? Doesn't interact.
Oh, it doesn't interact. Infinitesimal dose, safe for all ages.
Babies,
Magic in a bottle.
elderly. Yeah, magic in a bottle. We love homeopathy. And so this is just a spray. And as always, even if something doesn't seem super detoxifying, you always start slow. So they're recommending 3 to 9 sprays under the tongue 3 times a day. Our patients, I'd probably say start with a spray. I know we gave one something for their pituitary, and I guess it helped detox, and like they put them into it's a kind of like a little flare. So any product that you think, "Oh, this is just super nourishing," may not be that way for you at first. So don't just take a ton of everything right away.
Well, and for two
That's
different reasons. One, if you start giving the body what it needs, it's like, great, thanks. And now it's going to do a bunch of things and you might feel
yeah,
worse, right? The
yeah,
other thing is hearkening back to our other podcast about detoxification. If you're someone who is a type 2 ineffective accumulator, bad, ineffective eliminator, and you just keep putting more stuff in there, like you're going to build up and you're going to feel worse. So there's a couple different reasons to feel worse, you know?
yeah, right. And a patient just said to me yesterday, so I'm on this candida protocol because she has really high levels of candida in a GA map. And it makes perfect sense with all of her symptoms. But she actually has candida, because I have people who come to me all the time. They say I have candida, and then they don't have candida. It's not candida. I'm laughing because so many people tell me they have candida, and then they don't have candida. But she actually has candida, and she's already on a couple items that I specifically chose for her. And she's like, "Well, can I take more?" I was like, "Why?" "Well, I want to get rid of it faster." I'm like, "But you said you have a really bad headache from killing off the candida. Do you, like, if we gave you more, you'd not be able to go to work?" "Oh, yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right." Like, they have to be reminded, and she started laughing because I was like, more is not better. Like, less is more. I know we see this a million times, but I'm gonna say it's like every podcast, like, less is
Well,
more.
I've actually experienced that too with I, you know, I don't know if any of you know about craniosacral technique where someone
Love
literally is cradling your scalp, your skull in their hands and just holding space for the body to kind of unwind. And then they might go and put their hand under your sacrum like this. And when I get that done, Sue, I have to lie flat for 2 hours because I'm so achy from it.
See?
And
Because your
that's,
body
yeah.
just, like, the ability to get rid of stuff. But oh my god, this reminds me of that. Someone's like, "Oh, do that migraine device. It works on your vagus nerve so that you go into parasympathetic." Well, guess what? I probably haven't been in parasympathetic with everything I've gone through in my health, right? And my trauma. And so I did this migraine device, which is basically just sits on your vagus nerve. I got sick as a dog for a week because I think I did a newsletter on this for anyone who's been following my newsletters. I wrote about how if you put the body into rest and digest where it's supposed to heal, but it hasn't been in rest and digest, it's like the floodgates open. So just like you just said, craniosacral is literally, the whole point of it is to put you into parasympathetic, and then you feel those kind of like detoxy symptoms after.
And
It's
the
fascinating,
readjustment of
right?
all my bones and muscles, you know what I mean? And it's not someone
Yes.
cracking me, and yet I can feel all the alignment changing. You know what I mean? So,
Yes, and drain it.
yeah, so it's just to show that even small things can make huge changes. I don't know if you
Huge
knew
difference.
this, but at the end of med school, seeing Dr. Tom, and he had all those crazy machines, right? And so he had me, do some machine, and to tell you what percentage sympathetic versus parasympathetic, and I was 90% parasympathetic. and I was
Really?
dragging. And I was like, I don't understand. And he's like, you're so over the line in burnout that like your body can't mount the sympathetic response.
Wow, I never thought of the opposite way. Oh, so you were like, yeah, but this is not showing me that I'm calm. This is like showing me that I'm like
Yeah.
on the like, road with my tongue
Yeah. That I
on the
had
street.
nothing left. And that's when I was having
Wow.
panic disorder.
Wow. I did not know. Why didn't I get to do that machine? I probably did every machine in there. He probably is like, I don't need her to see what
Yeah.
that shows.
Don't tell her.
That's so cool. So it basically tells you how much dominance and what
Yeah, so
nervous
I
system.
thought like you were saying, like I thought, "Oh, wow, like I'm a Zen Buddhist monk." You know what I mean? No. No. I was panic disorder, stressed out, like, you know?
Absolutely. Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that because I never would actually think you would think like immediately, like, oh yeah, that means I'm doing the right thing. But you're like, well, why am I so exhausted?
Burnout.
Oh my God. And I wanted to also share a little bit about so we wrote a list last night when we wanted to prepare for today to make sure we get you all the juicy details. We did a list of how mold exposure contributes to burnout and then how burnout can worsen mold illness. So before we go into some ways for sleep and support and more recovery stuff, I wanted to just mention a few things on this list because I think it can really hit home for a lot of you. So how mold exposure contributes to burnout. Well, should we do that one first or how burnout worsens
Do the
mold? What do you
burnout so
think
we
would be
stay in the
good?
same order. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So how burnout worsens mold illness. So just being burnt out can weaken your detox pathways. So burnout impairs the liver function and reduces glutathione, making it harder for the body to detoxify mold toxins. And then how burnout worsens mold, it increases the susceptibility to mold reactivity. So chronic stress and HPA axis dysfunction, which do you want to tell them really quick what HPA means?
Hypothalamic pituitary axis. I was like, "Oh man, she put me on the
Yeah,
spot
you
because I was
got
just listening,
it. I know, sorry.
Jerk.
HPA and HPA axis dysfunction can increase mast cell activation and histamine issues, making mold symptoms even more severe. And then how burnout worsens mold, gut dysfunction and increased inflammation. Burnout can lead to gut permeability, leaky gut, microbiome imbalances, and higher systemic inflammation, all which will worsen mold related symptoms. And then another reason how burnout worsens mold illness, poor decision making and reduced capacity for healing. When you're burnt out, it's harder to take the actual steps, right? To do the thing, right? To go remove the mold, call them, I've had people for like four appointments where I'm like, did you put the mold plates? Because Microbalance has those test plates that we always love and talk about to screen. No, I'm so tired. I'm like, oh my God, you just have to open up the plate and put it like there. That's it. But they're that burnt out that they can't even put the mold plate. So it's basically they're saying it's harder to take steps to remove the mold, to do things to support their detox pathways, and to also implement a dietary lifestyle. So
Or
this is what I see a lot.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, or even do labs, like functional labs,
Yeah.
like to read the whole thing of like when do I pee in the thing, like it's like too much for people. It will take them 6 months to get a lab done sometimes.
Absolutely. They're like, I don't even I had patients the other day say, just opening the box and reading the instructions is almost
Overwhelming.
like too plaguing.
Yeah.
And then think about then why they go and eat fast food and do all of these things because they're already exhausted at work. Now they're going and buying food that's easily accessible but not healthy, which is perpetuating it. So if you're one of those people who are like, what can I eat that's healthy? Go to my I have highlights. There's like 6 of them about recipes. I put like the quickest, easiest, like I did a salad last night. Someone's like, what's the recipe? It was literally like microgreens, beets, like literally just cut them out of a bag, like microgreens, beets, cucumbers with olive oil and lemon. Like it's so simple. Like you can do simple things. They don't need to be complicated. If you are a person who can afford like a meal delivery, maybe get a Sakara that's very plant-based and then add protein, like just have like easy to throw protein on it. So a lot of patients, they've had to invest in that because they feel like their exhaustion's too profound that they are like, I actually can't like if I'm getting home from work at 8 o'clock, by the time I get home from, with the subway and I don't have the, energy to do that, then find out what you can do that will get you that healthy food, right? Because then keep eating that unhealthy food is just going to perpetuate the
Well,
burnout and the inflammation.
also maybe taking a little time to, people love being on their phones. And instead of
Yeah.
scrolling, maybe start Googling to see, are there restaurants where I can do takeout? Like the other day, I didn't have time to pack my lunch and I was in between patients doing acupuncture. And there was this great little place next to us that have these bowls, quinoa, black beans, grilled chicken, tomatoes, avocado. Delicious.
Perfect. Good. Perfect.
You know,
Simple.
$15.
That's it. That's it.
And
Exactly. And
totally
then that
full
took
and nourished.
Yeah. Every menu has something you can find. Like, even if it's like, I don't know, if there's just like a salad that doesn't have the healthiest things, like look on the menu and be like, oh, look, I see olives there. Oh, look, I see this there. Can you just add this in? Or can you reduce, like, take this out? Like, there's always something. And for $15 for you to not feel like crap the whole day,
Yeah.
totally worth it.
Yeah. Because then you're
Right?
also happy with yourself that you did that for yourself. And it was delicious.
Delicious.
Yeah.
And you knew you made a decision for yourself. And one other thing too now, if we go in the
Oh,
opposite,
yeah.
do you think we should talk about this now? Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. And then before we go to complete, how mold exposure contributes to burnout.
Well, one thing I did want to say before, when you were saying the poor
Yeah.
decision making, reduced capacity for healing, that last
Yeah.
one, Dr. Krista always talked about with, moldies, us mold patients, that the mold, we're anthropomorphizing mold here, just so you know, but the mold wants you to sit on the couch so it can eat you. You know what I mean? It doesn't want you to get the cool plates from Michael Balance and get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like, it wants to eat you. So,
That's so good to hear it like that, because it's like, oh, well, no wonder why I don't have that capacity. Like, it's like it doesn't want to push you because right? It keeps you in the environment where it can actually thrive.
yeah, because
Right?
that's his job, is to eat organic matter and turn it down into its constituent parts to feed soil. Like, that's literally his job. So, she always talks about, that's one of the harder things to help with patients, is to help get them motivated and off the couch. And, because it's how they feel, it wants to eat them.
I love that Dr. Krista even brings that up, because it's a really good way for people to see it a little bit differently, right? Not in these like scientific terms. And I also want to talk about how mold exposure now contributes to burnout. So we also have a list here. So chronic inflammation and immune dysfunction. So mold can expose triggers to systemic inflammation. It puts the body in constant stress. It also has, of course, stress on the immune system. The ongoing immune activation can lead to the brain fog, the fatigue, the sense of feeling like you can't fully recover, mimicking or worsening burnout. And then how mold exposure can also contribute to burnout is, again, that HPA dysfunction. Mold toxins can dysregulate the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, leading to abnormal cortisol patterns. This can cause energy crashes, poor stress tolerance, difficulty recovering from that, any just even normal daily exertion, which are key features of burnout. How mold exposure contributes to burnout: mitochondrial dysfunction and energy depletion. Mycotoxins can impair the mitochondrial function, reducing ATP, which Dr. Sparks talked about before, your body's energy currency. This leaves you feeling physically, mentally exhausted. Then we also have neuroinflammation and mood changes, which, by the way, the Dutch actually has now. Do you see? I love that neuroinflammation marker. And this patient was getting really worried that she had something like scary, but she's been living in mold. And the doctor was like, no, it's mold. Her brain's on fire. So I thought that was really
Quinolinate.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And it says neuroinflammation and mood changes. Mold exposure affects the brain, increasing neuroinflammation, reducing dopamine, our pleasure chemical, right? It also can impair neurotransmitter balance, which leads to overwhelm, anxiety, depression. And then lastly, sleep disturbances. Many mold-exposed individuals struggle with insomnia, light sleep, waking up unrefreshed, further depleting their resilience and increasing their susceptibility to burnout. So that leads us to sleep. So let's talk about sleep.
Well, one interesting thing, because we were talking before about the cell-tropin and the cellular danger response. There's also that response on a body response that can happen at night, especially if the mold is in your bedroom, where your body wakes itself up in this alert startle response because it's the toxins are going in, so people will wake up out of sleep, out of deep sleep, with a start kind of feeling, and that can be a sign of mold in your bedroom.
Oh, wow. You even told me that recently when I told you about the nightmare altitude story that when I
Oh
went
yeah,
to
that's more
Utah.
about breathing. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we
Yeah.
were talking about that, but that just made me think of that. So you're saying that people who have mold that especially is in their bedroom, they can kind of wake up with that like gasp or
Yeah.
that like that panic kind of
Yeah.
sensation.
And your heart might be
Mhm.
racing right when you wake up because your body's like, we're being injured and we need to run away, and you're like, actually, I was
Oh,
just
wow.
sleeping. You know what I mean? So, so it's kind of the cell danger response on a body wide response.
That's so interesting. And what about too that like when you literally are waking up, besides like obviously if you're in like a traumatized state, you could be waking up to pee a lot and because you're in like fear, nervous system, that adrenal. But what about the urinary frequency of mold exposure
Yeah.
and how
So,
then having hot and then you can't sleep because you keep waking up?
yeah, so that can increase too. There's a pituitary hormone called ADH or vasopressin. It's anti-diuretic hormone. A diuretic is something that makes you pee, and so we have that hormone to decrease the amount of urine that's going out. But if that is low or kind of almost non-existent, it's more you'll have more frequent urination, especially at night. People will notice they're waking up 3, 4 times a night to urinate. Um, I guess that, would be considered diabetes insipidus, right? So if you're low on that, but there are homeopathic remedies that Dr. Krista taught us how to use to try and help that situation. And I wondered too if the cell-tropin would help that.
That's great to know. So just so you guys know, Dr. Sparks does see patients for all sorts of symptoms and conditions, but her main focus these days has been a bit more mold. So if you are listening to this and you are struggling, she is amazing with helping patients with mold. She's also great with autoimmunity. You can check out her testimonials on our website, naturallysue.com. We also have a mold VIP program that's amazing that basically keeps you accountable for at least 6 months. We support you throughout. We give you good educational handouts. We make sure that you're getting a treatment that you actually need at the proper time. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. We are taking on patients still. And then what about the just basic sleep hygiene that people think, again, not fancy, but they're not doing? I know we said some of the ones before about the lowering the light, but maybe like talk a little bit too about stabilizing blood sugar.
Yeah, that's a big one, especially for perimenopausal people, because when you're having hormone fluctuations, remember insulin that helps our sugar go into our cells is a hormone, right? So it's part of the symphony. And when blood sugar is dysregulated, you can end up with, night sweats, hot flashes. You can also wake up with that startle response just from blood sugar drops, so stabilizing blood sugar is really important. And that's one of the main things that I have patients do is work on, call it blood sugar balance hacks. So I had one woman, she was in perimenopause and we were doing blood sugar balance hacks for that, for those night sweats and everything. And it means kind of eating your fiber first, protein and fat second, and then carbohydrates last. And so you're not getting these spikes and drops of blood sugar. You're getting like a smooth. And not only did it help get rid of her night sweats, but her eczema went away.
Wow.
Yeah, because insulin is pro-inflammatory.
That's so true. You would never just think of it linked directly, but do you see how everything's
It's
connected?
amazing,
I would never like think of that. Like usually you
primarily
like think of more hormone stuff or like you
gut.
don't think so much actual gut skin thing. That's so true.
Yeah. So that was pretty
Wow.
cool. And then other things with sleep is, a cooler room. I actually use a grounding sheet because way back when we
Ooh,
started school, I had plantar fasciitis and I had it for 3 years and tried everything, conventional under the sun, and then got a grounding sheet because of Dr. Nick. And within a week, my plantar fasciitis got better from just grounding every night for 8 hours.
that's nuts.
Yeah.
And so now you sleep on the pad?
Well, it's a sheet. It's an actual, like,
Oh,
fitted sheet.
she oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, there's one, I had it a long time ago, I don't know where the hell that thing is because I have now storage for all these things that I
Uh,
don't even know where anything is anymore. But I thought, like, I think I bought one from Dr. Mercola at one point. It's like,
okay.
is it a sh wait, you're actually saying it's a sheet, like
It's a
an not
fitted
a
sheet.
sheet, not a grounded sheet. You're talking about like an actual bed sheet.
Yes. And it
There's a
has
grounding sheet?
yeah, and it has, like, silver thread in it that has, like, a little connector that goes to the ground in your electrical socket.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't even know this existed.
Oh my gosh. Well, the funny thing is they had them back well, they didn't have, like, the full fitted sheet, they just had a sheet that you would, like, wrap around your bed, where your legs go, and, that was back in, what, 2011, 12, and then they went away. They were, like, off the market for years, and then they just recently came back, and I was like, "Thank God," because they also, like, after you wash them so much, the threads kinda break and they don't work as like, you have to get them every once in a while, you know?
Oh my god, I'm so excited. I'm gonna buy it now, and Stanley's gonna say, "What is this shit now in my house?" We have, there's, like, a freaking package that comes every day. It's, like, insane. It's, like, I'm now gonna get a ground I'm so excited. I actually thought you meant, like, a sheet, like, a little piece of a sheet, like, a piece of, like
Like a
you actually
mat.
meant a yeah, like, I thought you meant a mat. Oh
No.
my god, this is so
It
exciting.
really
Okay,
has
so we got
changed my sleep, especially in perimenopause, and then also
wow.
with mold and Lyme, like, just the amount of like, you were talking about the inflammation and the neural inflammation and the chronic inflammation. It's just, you're just dealing with it, and they show, in is it Dr. Sinatra? His book, they'll show before and after grounding 45 minutes, and it's amazing to see the decrease in inflammation, you know?
Okay, you just inspired me. Now I gotta buy that.
And you don't have to pop a pill, right? Like,
No more
I'm always
pills.
about what can we do a thing where you don't have to pop another pill, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Absolutely. Okay, so everyone needs to stabilize their blood sugar and get a mat, right? That's so far. Get a certain amount of mats or a sheet. You're gonna get a
grounding
sheet and then
sheets.
right, restorative yoga you said. We
Oh,
said
yeah.
blue light. Maybe you wanna talk about those?
Yeah, so they have the blue light glasses. So I always say, like, you have things on your phones and computers called, there's one called F.Lux, which is an app that, you plug in where your zip code, and then it knows by your longitude and latitude where you are with the sunset, and then it will turn your computer down. So that's great for people that don't have Macs, because Macs, they have the app built in. Use it like night shift. And so it will turn it more red away from the blue light. But then, there's the people watching TV and I don't know any TVs with blue light filters on them. So, you can get the glasses for that. And what else were we talking? Oh, so for the people who are in the head, right? I can't stop thinking. I tell them, maybe doing a little 15-minute restorative yoga or yin yoga would be helpful to kind of get you back into your body and out of your head. And there's another thing that I like to do when I'm like adamant that I'm going to stay in my bed is I imagine what I would do if I won the lottery. So then I just it works. And I tell patients this all the time because what we're doing usually when we're ruminating is we're worrying about something that could happen or the next day or whatever. And the mind's like locked on, right? But then you start thinking about like, okay, if I won $10 million, first I would do this, then I would do, and then by the time I get past like all my donations, I'm asleep.
You're a goner.
Yeah,
Oh my god, that's good. I
yeah.
never even I would yeah, they're like yeah, people tell you these things, "Oh, think of this, think of the beach," and, like, I'm at the beach, and then I'm thinking of the work I'm doing at the beach, I'm like, "No, that's not working." But that's a very distracting enough, I feel like that would
I
help
think
me
it
fall asleep
is,
better.
and you can go all different ways. Like, how much would you give to your family, or how much would you give to your favorite charity, or whatever it is, or how many
Oh
trips would
my
you go
goodness,
on?
love that, that's such a good tip, and you know what's funny when you said before You were like, "Oh, the Mac already has that one that it winds down." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's why." But again, this is why my cortisol's high. If I'm working at 9 o'clock at night, I get pissed because I'm like, "I can't see the damn screen." So I'm asking myself, like, "I didn't lower that screen." And then I'm constantly putting it back up and it's constantly putting it back down. So it's basically like, Susan, go the hell to bed. Stop this shit at 9, 10 o'clock at night on your computer. So
Exactly.
that's okay. So thank you, Mac, for trying to get me to bed and get us all to bed. That's amazing. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Microbalance new product they have, the Sleep,
Mm,
the homeopathic spray.
I don't know
Yeah.
where should I hold it? Is that the
Yeah,
right
there you
place?
go. We can Yeah, it's Sleep, AHHSLEEP. Amazing. Yep.
Yeah, I did wanna say one thing about it, though, is I took it last night, and I slept through the night for the first time in, like, a week. So that
No
was
way.
yeah. I woke up at 8 and I was not 8, 6, but after 8 hours of sleep, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't wake up." So perimenopause is not easy, but there's help.
Wow, that's so good to know. So, yeah, Stanley used it too, and he's like, I hear him in the middle of the night too. So he like when he does, if he does wake up, he just puts it in his mouth. But you actually took it, and then how much did you take? And then you literally just knocked out.
I did 2 squirts under my tongue, and, I
That's
already
it.
have, like, a whole I have a whole as you get older, so many comedians joke about this. Like, when you're a kid, you can like sleep upside down on a staircase, and then every decade you have to add something for sleep. Oh, I have to have the perfect pillow. I have to have like the temperature cold. I have to have no noise. I have to have this TV on, whatever it is. So I do magnesium cream on my neck from Moonglow Minerals, and then I do a 3 milligram tablet of melatonin because melatonin is also an antioxidant, so it's really good for mold. Um, and then that's usually it. But then I was like, I'm gonna try this all sleep, and it's homeopathic, and us in homeopathy, so it was pretty great.
I know. So anything only that they bring it add. But yeah, we do like combos of stuff. So you can combine it with anything. So I take personally, it doesn't mean you have to do this. I take one magnesium glycinate, one neuromag, and then I take a theanine, and then you can add that, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
it's
people are
not
like,
gonna
"Oh my god, is
interact.
that too much?" No, it's not too much because magnesium is a mineral. Theanine is a
Amino
precursor to
acid.
GABA. It's just
Yeah,
acid. Like, it's not. I think people get so worried because of interactions with medications that it's like, yeah, but one's a mineral, one's just amino acid. So once you get them, feeling safe about taking things, listen, you don't if you maybe lived on a prairie or you didn't have a stressful job, maybe you need nothing. You put your head down, you fall asleep.
yeah,
But we're doctors. There's a business to run. There's personal issues. There's our own health stuff. So that happens to be like my little sleep combo. And then when let's just say I'm under immense stress, I may add even more stuff to that. So that are not going to interact if there's any medication. So I want to just really encourage people to use homeopathy more because it doesn't interact with anything. And the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work, or you need to increase maybe the dose. Maybe two wouldn't, maybe would have been enough for some.
yeah.
So you
And the
just
great
do
thing
a little.
about combinations too is so the way homeopathy works is it's an infinitesimal dose of like treats like, right? And so I use coffee as an example. Like if you drank a lot of coffee, you'd be like wired and jittery and maybe pee a lot. So if you have symptoms of that and I give you a tiny little dose of coffee, it would tell the body like, "Oh, I don't want this anymore," and the body heals it. You know. So it's working on it, and each remedy works that way, but we can't take everybody's case that's listening to this podcast and give them the perfect remedy, right? So a combination remedy has maybe 4 or 5 different things that can work that way. Plus I think it also has homeopathic pituitary gland.
Oh yeah, can you read some of the ingredients in that one?
It's tiny little bottle. um oh, I actually don't think I can right
Sorry,
now.
I would have had my bottle, but Stanley went through 2 bottles already, so I didn't have it to show.
I I did read it before. I do think there was
I think
homeopathic.
there's coffea. I think coffea is in there, isn't there?
Is it?
Coffea,
I
coffee.
honestly,
I
it looks like
believe.
dots.
Okay, it's okay. We'll put the link for you guys
Yeah.
because you'll be able to on the caption of the podcast, you guys will be able to click on our special landing page for this podcast, and everything we talked about in the podcast will be easily able to be purchased through there with a discount code MDN. So we have that.
Struggling with sleep but worried about grogginess or medication interactions? As a naturopathic doctor, I know how important restful sleep is for burnout and mold recovery and overall healing. That's why I recommend Sleep by Microbalance Health Products. This gentle homeopathic formula is safe for all ages. It won't interact with medication and helps you fall asleep naturally without next day drowsiness. If you need deeper, more restorative sleep to support your health, check out Sleep at microbalancehealthproducts.com because true healing starts with good sleep.
So if you want to heal, you have to sleep.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's going to be number one. And I love what you said before. And you said this last night, and it really stuck with me. And you said, people sleep in periods are great ways to tell us how our body's working. Oh, and obviously their bowel movements too. But
Yeah.
just if your sleep sucks and your periods suck, that probably means something's wrong.
Something's off.
Right? Something's off. We got to fix that. There has to be something we got to
and
do.
your bowel movements, and so if we check in on those three things every time we talk to you, we don't have to do the labs per se every single time we talk to you because we're like, oh, is it getting better? Is it moving in this direction or that direction?
Exactly. And not everyone has access to labs all the time and can do all of that. So absolutely. And so if anyone does try Sleep, you can DM me or Dr. Sparks on Instagram. I'm dr.susanc. Dr. Sparks is drsparksnd. And you can also put it in the comments of the podcast because I would love to hear what you guys think of it. And is there anything else we missed? We talked about so much good stuff today. Is there any other last things you feel like we missed?
I don't think so. I just encourage everybody to sleep and sleep like a baby, right?
Sleep like a baby, and just understand that if you have been exposed to mold for a really long period of time, you have to make sure that you go through this burnout recovery process. So doing all the basics, like if nothing else, get better sleep, eat well, move your body, stress management, get your eyeballs in the sun. And then if you need specific care, you can absolutely reach out. We do offer 10 to 15-minute free consults so we can get to know you a little bit, what you've done, what you've tried, maybe what hasn't worked, and then how we can help you if we feel like you're a good fit and we're a good fit together. We won't take on people who we feel are not good fits because we want to make sure that we can help you. We don't want to just be another doctor you go to that then you say this didn't work. And while we can never guarantee 100% that, we can't say that, we always work our absolute best to make sure that you get well. And, Dr. Sparks and I do collaborate on cases together constantly and ask each other our expertise and our opinions. But I want to encourage you that if this does sound like something you're looking for, to have a conversation with one of us, especially Dr. Sparks, if it has to do with mold, to be able to say, okay, let's see if someone else can help me here and let me finally get through this once and for all. So we want to thank you guys so much for being here and listening. Dr. Sparks, do you have any last words?
But that's also the reason for all the different VIP programs, because I just can't express enough how important it is in the beginning for regular follow-ups, because we don't do traditional medical care where we just suppress a symptom and send you on your way, right? Like, we're trying to root cause, find things, tease things out. We'll give you something. Is that showing us is something else happening? Like, that first 6 months is so important. And if you're seeing us at month 1 and month 6, it's like taking the new case all over again, right? Because what happened in that 6 months? So it's just really important to follow up regularly in the beginning, I guess is my point.
Absolutely. And the VIP programs will give you a late, like we have VIP programs where you talk to us either once a week, we have 2 times a month, or we have once a month. And then we have pay per visit. If you're going to do pay per visit, stick with at least no more than that 4 to 5 week, because we want to be able to see what changed, what's working, what do we need to swap. We need to know that so we can help you better. So the more that you actually be compliant and follow up, the quicker, you're going to get better,
Yeah.
right? Because just like you said, you're starting all over again. So thank you for mentioning that. And thank you so much for being here again. I am looking forward to you joining me again next week. We're going to do our final in the series of the Microbalance sponsored post. It's going to be, actually, we didn't decide yet. We're going to decide based on what we hear from the last 3 podcasts. So stick around, keep listening so you can hear the last one. For any Microbalance health products, please visit microbalancehealthproducts.com and use code MDN at checkout for 10% off of your order. Thank you so much, Dr. Sparks.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of your day.
You too.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Modern Day Naturopath Podcast with Dr. Sue.